Still don't see any attendees.
Not yet.
I guess we have none.
To the February 25th meeting of the Finance Subcommittee of Half Moon Bay for a special meeting and presentation to review recommendations to the City Council for the mid-year budget and any adjustments. So this meeting is now called to order. I don't think I need to do any kind of roll call. Correct? Good. All right. So why don't we begin with our first presenter, who will present first?
This will be Ken presenting.
Ken, that's right. I figured. Just wanted to double check. Good. All right, Ken, floor is yours.
Let me share my screen. All right, so this is a very streamlined, concise presentation of what we will present to council as far as adjustments. And we don't have as much, we will build our narratives in our staff report, but it's a very streamlined and gives any opportunity, any questions, just feel free to stop me. Our agenda is we're going to talk about our major revenues and those adjustments, however big or however small, because they are our major revenues. We're going to talk about other revenue adjustments, and the expenditures that you can expect to see that we will be asking for are CIP, excuse me, and then what everything looks like if it were to be approved.
Great.
So here are our major revenues, what we approved, what we received through December, the first half of the year. That blue column is a percentage of what we received of our budget, and the gray column is what comparison to how, as a percentage, how we received from the previous year. And this kind of drove how we kind of forecasted what we thought we might receive. And you may notice the biggest difference is TOT. As of December, we received 83% of what we had budgeted for. In the prior year, we had received 53. So that says to us that we're doing very well in this category. If you remember correctly, we went very conservative as we didn't know where we were going, and it was in the middle of May. And for that reason, looking at it, we are estimating that we're going to end up at 3.7, which is about 1.4 million than what we had initially budgeted for. We feel that's a very conservative number. That assumes that we operate around 50% of what we did in a normal year. It's very possible that we do much more than that, but 3.7 is a very comfortable number. And it's a big chunk of an increase for us. Property tax, we received 51% in comparison to 48%. Doing a little bit better. We put in a flat amount. There's one portion of property taxes that we received that was more than we anticipated. So we think we're going to end up at 3.5 million, which is about 155,000 more. Sales and taxes, we didn't go as conservative as we wanted to. We kind of hit middle of the road. We thought, but we're still doing better than what we had budgeted for. You can see 44% over 42%. We have a sales tax consultant who does these forecasts and anticipates how much we think we're going to receive. In May, they weren't really sure what we were going to do. Now they kind of have a better idea. They think we're going to hit 2.6 million for this year. I kind of came to 2.7, so I feel really good about that 2.6 number, and that would mean about a $400,000 increase in our revenues there.
And Ken, can you? This question comes up every time, but let's address it every time. So sales tax is a little different than transiency occupancy tax and property tax in terms of the time lag. And so on the one hand, you're showing that we're easily going to make our projection even 400,000 more, but yet at 50% through the year, we had only received 44%. Can you just address that quickly?
Yeah, sales tax is there's a pretty big lag. There's roughly 2 to 3 months lag. We receive prepayments from the state when they think we were going to receive, and then 2 to 3 months later receive the bulk or true-up payments. So yeah, it's never going to be 50% on the dot at December. That's why we kind of look to see what happened last year. Usually we hover around 40% received, so it makes more sense that way.
And similarly with property tax, it's usually most people pay it in 2 payments. Second payment isn't due till April. So the number you see that probably reflects most of the first payment, which was due back in December as last date. So in April, we would see that number presumably double, which would equal about the number that we have there. So great.
Good. So our major revenues, we're thinking $2 million increase that we asked to adjust for our budget. We looked at all of our revenues, but there were some pluses and there were some minuses. The total of other revenue adjustments are a decrease of $266,000. And the big drivers of that decrease is our golf facility fees. We receive a percentage of people who use the golf courses as revenue. And then park and rec, our class revenue, our facility rentals, we kind of put in a flat number because we didn't know where it was going. But now we know we don't think we're going to hit that number. We know we're not going to hit the number that we put there. So that's what makes up that decrease. Our total revenue adjustment is about 1.7 million. And I'm sure everyone knows TOT is our most variable number and driver going forward. On the expenditure side, we're happy to and excited to be able to pay off some of the things we held off on as we developed our budget. I'm sure you remember that developing this budget, we held off on funding our pension. We paid our pensions, but we used our pension fund, our pension reserve. Well, we want to put $1 million back into that. It kind of the same mechanism with our risk management fund. We didn't fund that this year. We want to put those monies back so that we make ourselves whole going into the next year. We have other operating expenses that we want to increase roughly by 110. Community services, 40,000. They want to do some grant funding for economic development. Engineering, we had a vacancy that we had to utilize consultant work to fill that vacancy. That vacancy is not full, but they want to use additional help with that. Finance, we had a running high total with HDL, who manage our TOT and our business license, a little bit more than what we expected. So we just want to bump up there a little bit. Information technology, IT, that's the biggest one. We're requesting 103, and we could speak more about this, but mostly our ERP transitioning to a new ERP, transitioning to working from home. A lot of costs had accumulated with the big shift. Maintenance, not a lot, but it's here because we do want to hire a seasonal maintenance worker during the summer. And in Parks and Rec, because the revenues are not doing too well, we also going to decrease the expenditures. With that, the total for operating adjustments is about 1.61. And then we have our CIP. Here's all our CIP adjustments in those amounts. Some of them that have a CIP number are things that we held off on for COVID or haven't started yet. And then we have 2 new ones at the bottom. Mr. Dowdy is on the call for any questions about any particular projects, but we want to get going on some of these things, and that totals about $579,000.
And it might be best, we could complete the presentation, but maybe we take questions here. These are obviously our recommendations, as Ken just said, and John's ready to answer questions about these 6 line items. So maybe it is best to pause and see if the subcommittee have questions on these 6 capital projects.
Debbie, do you have any? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about what Public Works is thinking about Poplar Complete Street and Poplar Gateways. I'd also like to know more about the sheriff's substation renovation.
We thought you would. John, go ahead, and then
Sure.
I'll jump in if needed.
Hey, just one thing, because John, you're going to go through all of these, right, in detail a little bit? John, I think you're muted. Wait, John, I think you're muted there.
John, you're muted.
I realized I was muted. Sorry. Yes, I'll just go through them. The ones that don't seem to be as interesting to you, I'll hit on briefly just so you're aware of what's going on.
Great. Ken, would you mind just backing up one slide?
Yep.
So, it's just one thing I wanted to, Ken mentioned this, but I know there always seems to be confusion. So for those who might be watching the tape later or whatever, in terms of our pension fund and in terms of cash flow, people might not realize that we're talking about reimbursing our pension reserve. So in other words, we always kept that reserve. It's accumulated over time. And then everywhere we always pay off our pension fund. So last year we decided to hold off on the pension reserve and keep it into our general into our reserve, so we didn't reimburse the reserve. It's never been a problem paying off our annual pension fund, and it's no problem this year. So the cash flow is fine on that, but we've decided that we will also reimburse our reserve, which is, again, they're like our other reserves for emergencies. So I wanted to make sure everyone understands that, because sometimes those two numbers get glommed together real quickly. So there's never been any problem or having to put off a default payment or deferral. We're fine. It was just for the reserve. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So keep in mind what we were looking at is some of the projects that we thought that we could get at least started, and for many of these to complete by year end, by fiscal year end. So there are some, just to clarify, there are some great projects that were pulled from the CIP last year that we envision coming back and talking about for funding fiscal year 21-22. But these were a small grouping of projects in which we wanted to bring forward because we thought that we could either move them forward. One was an emergency, or a couple were kind of emergency projects that came around, but primarily trying to fill the gap that we could meet in this current fiscal year. So more to come as we talk about. I think the priority setting will include some CIP conversation as well. So urban forest management program, pretty straightforward. Just reason why we're asking for the additional funding is that with the windstorms that we had, we've basically expended almost all of that program on emergency services rather than any of the preemptive and preventive work that we would normally do. So this would allow us to get at least some of the preventive work done and move it forward before end of fiscal year. Poplar Complete Streets, thank you. The reason we want to move this forward is that we are putting at risk the $1 million grant from Federal Highways Administration. We had to put on hold our design work there. I know that this had been an issue within the, particularly the next door community. The last meeting we actually had with the community and public meeting we had, it was not really anywhere near the rancorous event that occurred the first meeting, and in part because I think people understood that we weren't chopping down large trees. We weren't asking to basically make all of this, necessarily all curb, gutter, and sidewalk. We were looking at modified kinds of walkway approaches and softer approaches where we have the trees, in particular along Poplar. And remember, this project includes also the section between Main Street and Highway 1. So we're trying to also address that section. And this will ultimately have to be done in some form of phases. But the primary issue is this would release $81,000 toward the contract for the design, which we have in place, and they are about 60% design. We need to complete that work and not put at risk $1 million in grant funds. So that's where we are with that. Poplar Gateways is pretty simple. We have an EIR that's been almost about 60%, 70% plus done. With $50,000, we can finish that work, get to a point of certification and approval of the plan itself, because the plan is at 95%, 98% done. And what we want to do is set that up for grant eligibility. We know that there will be grants coming, and we think that that will go a long way for grant eligibility. The other piece of this is that as we look at continuing kind of having smaller projects come off of this, we can save actually funding by getting a certified EIR from having to do individual CEQA documents for those spin-off projects, like the Poplar parallel trail and things of that nature, and frankly the slot as well. So there's a cost savings we think ultimately that will occur out of having that environmental. Sheriff's substation renovation, if you recall, was in the CIP 2 years ago, and we did the design. The council received a presentation on the needs there for renovation. And basically, as a reminder, there's 3 modular trailers that make up our sheriff's substation. They have settled over the years. They have not been really maintained horribly well over the years, and they are in need of an update and lifting and improvements. We pulled this off, obviously, during COVID, but we had it in the prior year, and the money was there, but we could not get bidders. So we basically have decided that, recommending to you that we try to take care of this. And there's multiple reasons. One is that we just need to maintain and take care of our properties and deal with it. And the longer we wait on and delay on doing that work, the less time we have ultimately for the durability of these facilities and the structure. We also have had peripherally some issues with issues with the staff there and problems not necessarily in the building itself, but have created some problems and issues about safety. And we want to make sure that this building is safe. And finally, we really don't have an appropriate ADA availability particularly for female officers and staff for changing room and showers and those things, which put us at some risk as well on from ADA and just accessibility requirements. So that's why we're kind of here at this point asking to proceed with this project to protect our investment, which is our property there, and to meet some needs and requirements there. And in the end, if you've been over there to that facility, this facility is really tired and needing a facelift, needing some paint, needing some new floor coverings, and just to create a better environment over there as well. So that ultimately the end is there, but the reasons for this are really more practical than even that. And then
I would also like to just put my plug in for that last comment. Everything Mr. Dowdy said about the need of this project, the history, all true. And I would just like to underscore his last comments on the building being tired. Yeah, in my humble opinion, the interior space, is not great. And from my experience, space, there's a strong correlation between employees' workspace and employee morale. And so I completely agree that what we're going to do on the interior is an important part of this project. The new paint, the new carpet and flooring, the locker facility, they're going to put in new locker facilities, which are really important for deputies, having good, adequate storage for their equipment. So yeah, I just wanted to underscore that I think it's important that we give the interior the facelift that John was speaking to. So I'm very supportive of getting this one going again, since it did hit that hiccup pre-COVID where we couldn't get any bidders.
And their furniture there.
And furniture. We're going to do some furniture.
Their furniture looks like it's from a 1950s, television show. It's nothing ergonomic. It's a mess over there. So there are those issues too. The Kehoe outfall, I don't know whether you're aware of, but Jimmy Benjamin reported to us in late fall concerns about a failing outfall point at the Kehoe and Pilarcitos Avenue. And we have verified that has offset. The concrete pipe has basically offset. And so we're going to have to get in there and repair that. And obviously we're in a very sensitive area there, and we've been monitoring, but would like to get a head start on design of this and environmental work, with the intention of probably looking at late summer, early fall to finish this work when we have dry season, and easiest point for which the water board will not give us grief on. And the second issue is a sort of a related, unrelated, but related issue. Roosevelt Ditch near Pullman Court, which is John Hernandez's neighborhood there, if you're familiar with that. But there is a few things going on there. One is a sewer manhole that is looking like it's receiving a lot of I&I. So we have been in contact with Granada to talk about doing a joint project here. There are also just issues with the end of the cul-de-sac kind of failing with the proximity to Roosevelt Ditch. So again, we would like to get a jump start on this one to move forward with its design and environmental work, and then also to work again with Granada in terms of trying to get replaced one or two of the manholes that are in that area. And so that's what that's doing. And this is something that we've been backburnering for a long time, and we really need to deal with both of these issues. The Roosevelt was a back burner. Kehoe was a new one. That's the total.
Yep. So, yep, that is, with everything said and done, that is about $579,000 that we will be requesting that will be funded from the general fund. Looking at the fund balances or the financial outlook, you can see that our actuals for last year, what we adopted back in May, our beginning fund balance is 7.3, as you know, was a estimate considering we didn't know what our expenditures and revenues were going to be at the time. So we have gone into this year thinking that we will have about $400,000 unassigned at the bottom available to us to assign. After our audit, we realized that our beginning fund balance was much more than what we anticipated at $10 million. If you include our revenue adjustments and our expenditure adjustments, and this includes the very personnel things that we approved of back in earlier than a year, we come to a ending fund balance of $9 million. Now, because of our expenditures have gone up, we are recommending that we put more money towards our reserves. You can see that we adopted a budget with 6.2 in reserves. If this was approved, our reserves would go up to 7.2, which will get us pretty close to where we were before COVID. And after that, we will have about 1.9 unassigned. And kind of the recommendation there. It's quite a bit, but it's good. It's a good base going into budget development for 21-22. And then at the bottom, you can see our reserves as a percentage of our operating expenditures. Our reserve policy for the two reserves is 50%. And if this were approved, our reserves would be about 50% of our operating expenditures. And with
Okay,
that,
this is obviously a critical slide, and there's a lot of good information there. So maybe we also pause here and see if the committee members have any questions. But just to underscore, yeah, the third column, the revised budget, that includes all the recommendations that Ken and John just went over in that. So that column assumes that the subcommittee and the council move forward with staff's recommendations.
Yeah, so we explored this quite a bit there a week or so ago. So I think it's pretty clear to me, and it's pretty good.
Great.
I think we're on financially sound ground.
if there's any questions,
It was question time anyway. Okay. I thought you had one more slide, Ken.
no. If there's no more questions, then I'm going to pass it on to Lisa Lopez to deliver the recommendation.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that.
We would ask the Finance Subcommittee to actually make a formal recommendation to move this forward to the council on March 16th. And I apologize for not having the slide with the wording, but it is a recommendation, but it would mean that we could actually move the presentation, the numbers as is, forward to the council for formal approval.
Great. Debbie, it looks good for me. Do you have any?
Looks good for me, yeah.
All right, then so moved that we move this recommendation.
If I could just make two more points before you make the motion, it was included in a previous slide, but just to underscore it, and it'll be underscored when we come to council. There were two line items that Ken showed, and one was in the budget adjustments for community services. It was shown as 40,000. I believe that's our recommendation to put $40,000 towards this grant program for restaurants, breweries, and wineries. We're bringing that to the council this next meeting because of the timeliness. I just wanted to highlight that that's what you were seeing there if you glossed over that. And then I also just wanted to highlight it, Ken mentioned it, but the recommendation for part-time seasonal help. This is new, and we can certainly go in, John can certainly go into the concept in more detail in front of the full council. But based on our experience last summer and our approach for this summer, his feeling, he has a vacant maintenance position, but John believes he can better fulfill his needs if he, for now, hires a part-time person that can concentrate on weekends during the summer months, as opposed to filling that maintenance position right now. So I just wanted to underscore that. We'll be if that comes up during the council meeting, obviously John will be happy to go into more detail on that.
I would just be wondering whether, that amount is
Enough?
sufficient.
Yeah, I was thinking
Well, this is primarily for this year, from May and June. In July, we'd be bringing a fuller budget to staff the position, and it is only going to be from May through October. And we actually bring it before the council, but it still needs to go through its regular process through human resources. So.
And I think staff is also, as I recall our conversations, perhaps looking into adjustments, upward adjustments to abundant grace if we also feel for the summer we might need extra cleaning, et cetera. So
I think that was added to the contract already.
It's already added?
What was done last year would roll over for next year, yes.
And we always, we have set in their scope of work, the summer run, build up and run up of work and everything with that too. So we changed the schedule and where they go for the summertime crowds.
Right. Great.
And
okay.
I think we're good there.
And I just would like to add, just to make sure people understand that this is not in lieu of a maintenance worker position. It's actually to benefit and in addition to assist our current maintenance workers maintain and make sure that everything is handled throughout the week and there's consistency.
Thank you, Lisa, for that correction.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
That's important.
Yep.
The HR in me.
Appreciate that. Okay, good. So now, I have to make a formal motion or just, I would like to move that we move forward with these recommendations to full city council next meeting. Would you like to second that, Debbie?
I second that.
Okay. I'll call for a vote. Yes.
Vice Mayor Reddick?
Yep.
Mayor Brownstone?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you
It's
very
official.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great homework on the issue. You made it easy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa and Ken.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
And next, we will receive an update on phase 2 of the sewer rate study addressing capacity fees. Which I'm assuming, is that you, John?
Correct.
It is I.
All right.
It is I. So let me get you up to the top here. And sorry, I don't do this often I don't do the presentations on Zoom much. They realize I'm too old and too
You're doing
crotchety.
great. You're doing great. It looks
All
good.
right, can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect.
I had to go on how to geek it and remind myself how to deal with it. Okay, so I'm glad for the time today. It'll be brief and to talk a little bit about phase 2. And I'll just make it kind of straightforward here. Today we're not necessarily looking for any direction per se or even action taken, simply to give you an update and to tell you that we're going to be back meeting with you probably asking for a meeting in the next 30 or so days to come back and actually talk about this with the detail that is needed. But this is I don't think I have to spend much time on this. You spent a lot of time last year working through the sewer rate study and obviously adopting revised sewer structure and the fees that go along with that. And basically, as a reminder, that covered phase 1 of that was covering basically the operational cost, both Sam's operational cost of treatment plant and the city's operational cost of maintaining the collection system, keeping spills from occurring, all of those things. So that's what's encapsulated in the phase 1. So staff had always intended for a phase 2 and has remained under contract with Municipal Financial Services, MFS, Tommy, who came and presented to you on a number of occasions for phase 1. And he has done his work and modeled this and kind of moving forward. So that's good news. So the capacity fees, what we're talking about, sometimes they're also called connection fees. We use capacity fee because it's connection fees get sometimes confused with what it costs to actually connect the pipe to the main line from a sewer lateral. What we're talking about is a capacity fee, which basically is buying your share of the cost of the collection system and sewer plant to make it available to you to connect your house, your business into that sewer plant and that collection system. So it's a one-time fee. And it is not something we deal with often. And frankly, because we don't have a lot of development activity and we don't have a lot of new businesses, this is not a fee that generates a lot of money in any given annual time frame, any budget time. It's not a big number that we're talking about, but it is something that we need and should charge and something that we need to deal with. So our current capacity fees, and we changed those to actually capacity fees last year when we did the revise of the citywide rates and fees for that were not related to sewer. Were done about 5 years ago, but in fact, they really just carried over what had been done the prior 5 or so years. with the addition of a CPI index, a consumer price index adjustment annually. The current fee is for a single family house is about $18,000. And if you participated in, I believe, around 1994 assessment district, this is discounted by about $14,000. So between $4,000 and $5,000 is what we charge if you participate in the assessment district, and that's something we'll talk about in the policy issues. So I wanted to make that point. Therefore, that as an example, what does Montera charge? I believe the last time I looked at Monteras were almost double what we're charging for a single family home. But in part, that is because their cost of operating and managing and dealing with 13 pump stations and lift stations and force main pieces to that deal is an expensive proposition. And buying into that is there. So but that's a perspective on where our fee is in relation to Montera. With that. So really the issue I wanted to put out to you two particularly, and then ultimately we'll deal with this with the council and the community, is sort of two primary policy issues. So one is, what are we going to apply to accessory dwelling units? If we have a unit that's below 750 square feet, we cannot, by state law, charge the capacity fees, but we can charge capacity fees for 750 square feet and greater units. I kind of like this point because it is a choice then, and I think if people don't want to pay this fee, then they will choose to build a slightly smaller ADU, which may not be the worst thing in the world to happen. And so this is a reason, for dealing with that. I just point out that when we did the sewer rate study, we basically set a 0.5, one half of a single family unit cost on the rate structure. We would anticipate if direction is given to include the larger accessory dwelling units, that we would look at basically a half 50% cost to that capacity fee to follow along with what the rate study showed is their demand and kind of on things. So we wanted to put that out there. You're welcome today. There again, it's not formal direction, but if there is a consensus to say yes, we should be looking at this and heading down that probably 50%. That's helpful for us to know that we're on the right track.
I would say yes.
I kind of assumed that, but I didn't want to assume.
Makes sense. More stress on the system, so slightly higher fee for it.
The second issue is one that we are doing a little more research on. I just actually had a text message that our staff are over at one of our properties looking at and doing some research on trying to find the documents related to formation of the assessment district, the sewer assessment district, which we understand was around 1994, but frankly, the records in our electronic side are not where we would like them to be, and it's just not there. But the big question that I'll take the bigger policy question on this, is that we'll get information and be able to provide you greater detail about the former assessment or about the assessment district. But here's the challenge that we're having. When we look at what we've done since 1994 and the plant improvements and all the things that have happened, we are at a point where there's a question as to whether the assessments that were paid for during that assessment district have all been done and amortized out, and we're looking at the next level of improvements. So the question becomes really one as to what do we do with those existing assessments, and do they count for anything moving forward? Are they partial count? Or do we again give them basically that same total credit, which equates to a difference between about $18,000, $19,000 on connection fee and about between $4,000 and $5,000 connection fee. So it's a significant amount. And I don't have a good answer for you right now, or even a thought on a recommendation. we just wanted to let you know this is the challenge, and this is why we haven't been able to bring phase 2 forward, because we need to get some additional detail on the assessment district itself, and then come back with some options for the finance committee and ultimately the council with regard to this. We are anticipating, based on the work that's been done, that we're not looking at significant change in the fee, probably somewhere around $17,000 to $18,000 on Tommy's modeling. So we're not looking at a big jump or big fee issue here. It's really about, as we're seeing it, the issue of credit for the assessment district or not, and at what level, if yes. So that really brings me to the end. And again, questions, if you have any. Beyond that point, we're going to be back talking about this in greater detail, but I wanted to let you know that we are working on this. This is coming, and that there was always this phase 2 piece that was out there, but we just sort of decided that we needed to let the whole rates issue settle out, let us figure out and get all the assessments done, and then move this forward at a different time.
I guess I don't understand the assessment piece very well. The idea of credit, I'm not sure I follow that.
Well, again, what I can tell you is generally what I understand it was in the early 90s. There was an assessment district form that allowed people to pay into buying their capacity fees, basically through an assessment district. And with that money, then we use that money, I believe, to do the major update and expansion of the sewer plant. The problem I'm having at this point is that we are now at a point where we are looking at basically replacing that almost the entirety of that plant, at least all the pumps, electrical,
moving parts
related to that. And so it becomes this question as to have we amortized out and met the useful life almost point of all those improvements that were financed through that assessment district for the expansion? That's the challenge.
Well, it's been what, almost 30 years?
Yep. And obviously the cost of doing that was far less than what the cost of doing the remodel and the revamping is today. So
I would say no credit.
Okay. Let us look at it and deal with it. And when we give you the numbers and kind of deal with that and have better understanding of the assessment district itself, we'll let you make that decision. But I can tell you from my own perspective, I wanted to go there, but I also understood that there would be a political aspect to this. And also the fact is that it's a small amount of money generated out of this in the long term with it. The question is this, I think there is as much a financial as a political and perhaps more political in this than financial reason to consider maybe a middle ground on it.
Yeah.
So
that's where I'm leaning. I need argument to bring it down.
But I think you could definitely argue for no credit anymore from a purely financial perspective.
Yeah. That's where I was coming from. I hadn't.
Yeah. You know the SAM mix better than anybody else.
But the bottom line, I think you mentioned earlier, this is about the bottom line impact on hookup fees, right? Yeah. Which is currently somewhere between 17 and 18,000, and regardless of whether there's
residential, yeah. They're a lot higher for a new restaurant because of the type of material they send into the pipes. The treatment costs are significantly higher with that. So their numbers are higher, and we can get that information when we come, but it's easier just to try to focus this on single family because it's where most people have a concern about it.
Right. And at those current rates, we feel as they're amortized, there is enough to cover any improvements. Yep. So there won't be any large increases in rates. And Good. Okay. That's what I wanted to make sure I
And
understood.
again,
Great.
this is something that we should look at every 3 to 5 years anyway, and see if where we are and look at the next deal. There's a lot that goes into this. One of the questions we had is it, you know, are we talking about the cost of the SAM costs that have been fully amortized out and capitalized? Should it be what the replacement costs are? I think the model that Tommy put together from MFS is a fair approach to this and is a reasonable approach to what we think the costs are going to be. But down the road, we may have to look at that differently as we have better numbers and decide and where we go with this. But those are the challenge we're dealing with.
Great. Okay. I don't have any more questions. Do you, Debbie? Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's see. I move on to public forum at this point. I think there's 2 participants, maybe. Any questions from the public?
I don't believe we have any public comment, Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you for those 2 folks for joining us, and we'll close the public forum. And I think that's it. Anything else to discuss before we adjourn?
We have no additional issues. Great job.
Great.
Thanks to Jessica for working with my schedule for this meeting.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for this preview of what we'll discuss at the full City Council meeting. Very informative, and can't talk enough about budget things to make sure everyone understands. So appreciate it.
I want to say thanks to Ken, because I think Ken does a good job of communicating, you know, what the numbers mean. So thank you for that, Ken.
Welcome. Thank you.
Second that. Great. All right. Thanks everybody.
See you later.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day.